What do you make of this news with regard to Teamsters and potentially Uber drivers forming a union?
Well, look, I think that this is sort of an emerging market space, and there's a natural give and take. I think the announcement today, the settlement, is a win-win. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I think it's Uber saying we're going to be doing more to sort of self-regulate. But I do think that the market has some fits and starts here, but I see this as an overall win for Uber.
Now, Uber and the CEO, Travis Kalanick, have emphasized they believe drivers value independence, value their flexibility, despite this class action lawsuit. However, a lawyer for the drivers said today no court has decided here whether Uber drivers are employees or independent contractors, and that debate will not end here. This case stands as a stern warning to companies who play fast and loose with classifying their workforce as independent contractors who do not receive the benefits of the wage laws and other employee protections. So, of course, they've just settled this, but again, no court has actually made a decision here. Professor, what do you think of the broader implications for the sharing economy and for Uber going forward?
Well, as far as Uber is concerned, this is a big win for them. As you've pointed out, Uber's biggest source of valuation risk is uncertainty around worker classification. This is a big step in the direction of Uber being able to sort of put that issue aside. And as a consequence, I think that the $100 million, they're going to make up sort of multifold through an increase in their valuation. I think overall this is good for the sharing economy. I'm sure that there are situations in which it makes sense to classify sharing economy providers as employees. But with Uber drivers and Lyft drivers, I don't think this is one of those cases. I do think, however, it's really important that we start to think about a way in which we can fund benefits for these drivers and for other providers in the sharing economy. It's not going to come all from Uber. It's not all going to come from the government. It's not going to come from the drivers themselves. There has to be a partnership model. And, I think when we look back on this case, we're not going to remember the details of the settlement, but we're going to see it as the event that triggered this conversation about the need to protect the workforce of the future, which is going to be largely freelance.
Now, one of the interesting parts of this settlement is that drivers can now say, hey, tips aren't required or expected, but they are very much appreciated. And one of the great things about the Uber experience has been to press a button, get in, get out, and not have to worry about a tip or worry about doing anything else. Paul, what do you make of that? Could that significantly change the Uber experience?
So I think people have a newly ingrained habit of just Ubering a ride. They like the idea that it just sort of shows up like a teleporter, whenever they hit the app on their phone. But at the same time, that is not an insignificant issue. I liked it, you liked it, we all liked the idea that it took away this kind of end-of-ride decision-making about what I have to do with respect to a tip, which sounds silly, but it was really important. And now the problem is having reinstituted that at the back end, what happens if I don't tip? Does that mean that I, as a passenger, get a bad rating, and that the next time I call for an Uber doesn't come and get me because I didn't tip last time? It introduces a weird new source of uncertainty because you're sort of backdoor reintroducing this thing that we thought we got rid of, which was this nasty sort of subjective business of tipping in cab rides.
Now, Rishon, what have you heard from drivers about, do they want tips? Do they even want to put themselves out there like that?
In my talking to drivers, and I've talked to a couple, I think everybody's happy to get tips, obviously. It's a great extra source of income, and it sort of shows the recognition and appreciation for the work that they're doing. I do think that Uber and Lyft and others will probably have to sort of integrate or iterate their product in order to accommodate that, and how they choose to do it, whether it's at the point where you leave the car or the point where the receipt comes back and you can see the total. That remains to be seen, but I'm sure drivers will be happy to have tips included or added.
Now, it's clear that laws still need to change in order to accommodate the sharing economy. So, Arun, what are some of the hurdles going forward for Uber and other sharing economy companies?
Well, I think what's really going to create an opportunity for Uber, for Lyft, for the other sharing economy platforms is if we successfully create a safe harbor in which they can demonstrate that they are willing to participate in sort of providing a safety net for their drivers if there isn't the threat of this kind of, sort of class action lawsuit. And so I don't see the case as having eliminated the threat of additional costs that may come from different worker classification. But I do see it as laying the foundations for being able to say that now let's go ahead, let's create this safe harbor, and let us show you that we are willing to sort of pay for part of the benefits that these drivers, the face of our brands, the providers who we're sort of fighting with each other to retain, to bring to our platform, give us the space to be able to sort of offer them different things that they want as a retention strategy. And so, companies have done this all the time with employees. And so it's important that we sort of create a space for the sharing economy platforms to be able to sort of do the same kinds of things.